hope you all have having a pleasant day so far and are really excited for a brand new session of the Fireside Chat right ahead of us, organized by the Institute of Product Leadership. Well, my name is Vishal, and I'm pleased to be your host for today's session with the title Traditional Product Managers versus AI Product Manager. All right, without any further ado, let me kickstart this session by welcoming and introducing our distinguished speakers for the session. Pleasure to welcome Sai and Pinkesh. A quick introduction about both of them. We have Mr. Sai Satish Vedam, a former senior director of product management at Oracle, and also a passionate product leader coach. His experience leading cross-functional teams and navigating complex organizations dynamics makes him a powerful mentor and a visionary in the world of product management. Please also join me in welcoming Mr. Pinkesh Shah, the founder and CEO of Delight Loop. He has held senior roles at Qualys and McAfee and has taught at top business schools around the globe. He is a guest faculty at several international reputed B schools like IIM Bangalore, Amsterdam Universities, and more. Now, welcome Pinkesh and Sai, and thank you for being here with us today. Sai, just in case if you're
Super.
speaking, you're on mute. Yeah.
Right. Can you hear me okay now? Can you see?
Yeah, this is fine now.
Okay, super. Okay, good morning, Pikesh. How are you doing?
Doing
Early
very
morning.
well.
Which time zone are you in?
I am in San Francisco and just getting energized, meeting, a bunch of founders at the SaaStr conference. It's one of the largest AI SaaS companies get together but from around
Okay,
the world
guys.
this
Yeah,
week in
yeah.
San Francisco.
I think one quick housekeeping check. I encourage every one of you to turn on your cameras, please, but turn off your microphones if you have a background noise. It's pretty important as it is. This two-dimensional rectangular box of communication is not good. So it's even worse if we just have to stare at each other's face and talk. So if there are others who are participating, that'll be welcome to have your. So we're going to have a chat, right? This is not a death by PowerPoint session. So feel free to ask your questions. And of course, if you're asking it, turn your camera on so that we can see you and hear you who you are. So I see a whole bunch of people still not turning on the cameras. Don't be shy. We've all gotten used to it by now. It's been 4.5 years, and I'm sure you're very used to joining Zoom meetings in your work as well. How would you feel if we also turn off the cameras and talk? It would be fun, isn't it? So don't worry about your backgrounds. Go ahead and please do that. I'm going to call out a few names now. I'm not sure if you're not doing this, what is the value that you're going to derive. So Ajay, Amarnath, Animesh, Anita, Anu, Parpit, go on. Turn your cameras on. Thank you. Okay, sorry, Pikesh, you're saying some conference? You're going to be at a conference?
Yeah, this week almost 30,000 people
Wow.
gathered at the SaaStr conference here in San Francisco.
Mhm.
And it's amazing to see the energy on the floor, both in terms of buyers, but also vendors and software providers and product people who the entire theme, as expected, is all AI. And how single person companies are emerging,
Yeah.
growing to 100 million in revenue with just one person.
Wow. Wow.
Everybody
Yes.
else is a hired agent, outside of the CEO. So fascinating.
Yeah. Okay, good. I hope you have a great conference. I'm sure any conference surrounding product people is going to be a really fun one. But let me give a little bit context on today's discussion. If you remember, not too long ago, you and I did a fireside chat on AI product manager job responsibilities, expectations from the market, and also touched upon competencies and skills, right? So that are probably now going to be expected from for those roles. And we actually made two statements that a lot of people have latched onto. And I thought a whole bunch of people messaged and asked for more clarity on that. So I think that's a good reason, I would say, for us to get together again and spend a little bit more time on that. And the first statement that many people, I don't know whether they were taken aback or needed more clarity, was we said product manager first and AI product manager next, right? So I think a whole bunch of folks started saying, why not directly AI product manager? What does that mean? So I think we'll spend about few minutes on that, give a structural understanding of what did we mean by product manager, traditional product management, what are the roles and responsibilities of that, and how that is actually being influenced and impacted and probably even made better by the AIPM, right? So that's a first statement, and then later on I'll bring in the second one. Are you good to go?
Absolutely. I am sensing a little bit of a
Lag.
drop at the place that I am in
Yeah.
from an internet connection, but I'm able to hear. I hope you guys can hear me okay.
Yeah, you can. You can. Absolutely, you can hear you. I think there was a little bit of latency that's expected from a hotel, I suppose. Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. So, for a long time, you have hired many, many product managers. I've hired at least 60 plus PMs in my career, and we consistently emphasized on a couple of things, right? One, what is the fundamental role or responsibility of a product manager, right? Irrespective of the AI. Now, we'll bring in the AI elephant into the room later. But in that case, so how did you look at that role? What did you expect from the people that you are hiring, right? And both of us have hired people from variety of backgrounds, right? Not just from engineering, but from design, from psychology, from marketing, from pre-sales, from project management, right? Product managers have moved in from across the roles. So what were you expecting, or what are you still expecting, by the way? That's important. You're on mute. Sorry.
I think it's important to revisit the fundamentals. And even though it seems obvious, a lot of times we actually forget the foundation on which AI, PM, and other flavors of PM are built, right? So it's always good to go. One is what is the definition of product management? And I think it's important to go back and digest every word of that definition, right? So to me, the art and science of identifying market opportunity and then driving a team to develop compelling, competitive, and profitable products that ultimately deliver customer delight.
Yeah.
That is the entire world of product management summarized in one sentence, right?
Yeah.
And so I think every part of that, every part of that definition is important, right? The art and science, it's not just science, it's also the art of making those decisions. It's something that you need to build which is compelling, competitive, and profitable. Now, these are three sometimes conflicting priorities. What is compelling for a user and for a customer may not be profitable for the company. So, how do you balance that? How do you juggle that? And at the end of the day, are you delivering delight? You may automate a certain things and save time, but if the customer is not truly delighted, we're gonna have a hard time sustaining that product, differentiating that product, and having a lifetime value that's much, much longer, right? And so, as a product manager, I expect everybody to first demonstrate these types of attributes and capabilities before we even talk about, senior AI and other aspects of the product management, right? And so
Yeah.
to me, that's I think very important. Second is the part of your question is, and I'm currently hiring as well in the current company. We always look for people who may not have the experience of exactly what we are looking for from a domain perspective, from a specific, workflows that we're building. But we're looking for people who have really two important characteristics. One, is this person demonstrating whatever it is that they have learned over the years, and in a visual way, in a showable way, that I can actually go and search somebody's name and find their LinkedIn post, which is insightful? Can I go search their name and find a YouTube channel where they may have done webinars? And so we're looking for someone who has demonstrable portfolio of assets. The second thing that we look for is this person curious enough and has learned how to learn? And I think this is subtle, but probably the most important
Yeah.
thing, because what we see today is going to change in 3 days from now. In the AI world, in the AI first world that we live in, there are new models, there are new workflows, there are new capabilities. And so it's not important to know everything today, because it's just not possible to keep up with everything. But can you quickly learn something you didn't know about before? And I think that is a very important attribute that we look for, especially in today's
Yeah.
world.
And I think that that ability is not just about their own day-to-day work and scenarios, but essentially how is the market changing, right? What are the market trends today? Doing market analysis, doing competitive analysis, because new competitors keep emerging and they have compelling value propositions. How are you going to compete? Not just on product features, but a whole bunch of other dimensions, right? So this role continuously demanded that you not only be up to date about your own product and your own customers, but also the larger market and the trends that are happening, right? So some of these things, of course, are now being made easier and faster by leveraging AI. But as I said, I think we'll come back to the AI aspect in a second, right? Now, you have seen this and I have seen this. When we say there is no such thing as one product manager, right? There are multiple types, multiple focus areas for different product managers. The most common one that we see, and I'm not talking about the titles, right? Lots of interesting and creative titles, especially in India. Lots of business analysts are called product owners. Lots of product owners actually have titles of product managers. And lots of companies have, interestingly, program manager as a title, but they're actually doing product, right? Microsoft typically was a great example of that part of it. So if you actually look at these different focus areas for PMs, there is one group of product managers which look at it, come from a business perspective, right? They bring in understanding of the market, understanding of the business, define those business objectives, define the roadmaps based on what they need to achieve, both in terms of market and business. But the most popular PM role, at least in India that I've seen, is playing in the space of writing requirements, user stories, prioritization, scrum ceremonies or agile ceremonies, and execution driven, right? Working with engineering, QA, and to some extent on the design parts of it. So this is also we call as feature product manager, right? So you have product managers that bring business and market perspective. There are PMs that focus a lot more on the execution part of it. And then you have a third category of PMs who come from very strong domain expertise, right? So somebody who has worked for 10 years, 12 years in e-commerce or cybersecurity or any of those. Now, if you look at it, there are different strengths that they come from, but are there some, in your view, must have common mindset and skill sets that are required for them? Because I think what we have seen is way too much of feature product managers. And this role actually is impactful and strategic only if you bring in the market perspective and business perspective, right? So are there some most important and common areas that PM should bring in? I think that's a good context to get into.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and one that also is getting challenged, quite frankly, Sai,
Yeah.
and all of you who are listening on this call, you're probably experiencing this, right? Thanks to rapid prototyping tools. In fact, Praveen mentioned that in the chat as well. Um, you know, things like Cursor and V0 and Lovable are now reducing down from 6 weeks that it used to take to build a prototype, to test your hypothesis, to test your product with customers, down to 6 hours. So in 6 hours, you can have a fully functional product, a SaaS product, a digital product, especially completely interactive and working version without writing code, without writing, without building prototypes in Figma, and can go live and host it
Mm-hmm.
to start testing, right? So in that world, I think two things happen. One is that the window is shrinking, which is great news for product managers, but also the feature product manager, in some sense, has to evolve to go into a more customer context,
Yeah.
business context, and innovation context.
Mm.
Because if your only skill is to manage scrums, well, unfortunately, AI is going to probably replace a lot of that capability.
Or possibly a junior PM, associate PM will come and do as good a job as most of the people were doing it today. Right?
Absolutely.
AI doesn't need to replace what it's doing, but
Yeah.
the junior PM who knows how to use
Yeah.
better prompt engineering, brings in
Yeah.
better customer context, will create a PRD in like 5 minutes.
Absolutely. And it's happening already, right? I mean, just like we have tremendous amount of reduction
Mhm.
that's happening in the number of engineers that are
Yeah.
needed in a company, especially large companies. We're actually seeing the role of a product manager become a lot more strategic in the same
Mhm.
companies, on the other hand. So PMs don't have to worry, product management community doesn't have to worry about what's going to happen to my job. There's enough and more opportunities for every product manager to move up the value chain.
Yeah.
And to your point, evolve from being a feature product manager, a inbound, or a product owner, or a scrum master, or a business analyst type of
Hmm.
profile, and to kind of go out into a much more, monetization, pricing, packaging, messaging, customer acquisition, and look at those aspects of the product life cycle. So this is a brilliant opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's the key, right? What you said is product managers are now expected to and need to evolve into a lot more strategic roles. And you brought in three things. One is the customer context, the market context, and the business context, which
Yeah.
most of us always been looking for and advocating. But this is now far more important than what used to happen in the more operational, tactical, execution-driven roles. So, would we want to spend a couple of minutes on what do we mean by customer context, market context, and business context, so that our audience can get a better understanding of that?
Yeah, yeah. Let me see if I even have a visual to share. That might be easier to also see while I'm kind of explaining, right? So if you look at
Yeah.
every product manager, every full stack product manager in this world globally is expected to have these 25 competencies. And these 25 competencies that you see here in the circle chart is mapped into these 5 categories, right? From market analysis to strategic planning to product planning to go to market and sales enablement, right? Acquisition of customers and enabling of partners. Now, when we say customer context, it's so important to figure out who do we want to serve. There are lots of problems across the space with lots of different personas, as we call it in the market.
Yeah.
But choosing to build for a particular problem for a particular set of customers and prospects, that is not an easy decision, but one that's the most important, rewarding decision
Before you even start building the product.
if you do this right. And so to me, that's before you even start building. Absolutely. And so that to me is the customer context that we talk about with specific skills that you see here in the grid.
Yeah.
I think the second one is kind of the market context, right? And in some sense, okay, it's okay that you found a bunch of customers who have these problems and that you seem to have a good way to solve for it. But how big is the market? Is this a sustainable business? Because not every problem is worth solving. Not every problem becomes a product, and not every product becomes a business. And I think every good product manager knows and has developed the sense and has developed the skills and frameworks to be able to analyze and say, okay, this is a real business opportunity, not just a product opportunity, not just a great solution that's novel, but actually has real business in terms of the strategy, in terms of the size of the market, in terms of the business model, in terms of the revenue model, in terms of the business plan, right? And so putting all that together as a business plan, as a product plan, that actually drives revenue. That's what I said in my original definition. Can you be profitable? Maybe not today, but at least over 3 years. Super important is the second one, which is the kind of the business context and the market context. And the third one, I feel it's very important in today's world, in the AI first world especially, is the innovation context. I may not know which AI models are best in its own algorithmic outcomes. It's good to know, but I don't need to go build a new model. I don't need to have statistical understanding, but I do need to understand that, okay, if this is the problem that we're trying to solve, this is the right application of these cloud compute resources, these AI models. A recommendation engine is best suited for this e-commerce application, but a diffusion model is best suited for this other app. Knowing this gives you the edge to become a lot more innovative, because otherwise you will not have the credibility to sit down with the engineering team, your data science team, your finance team, to build something that is truly, truly delighting. So I think those are the three context mapped back to typical roles that we see in the industry in shades of blue and shades of red that you see here.
Yeah. Now there's often this question that keeps coming back, right? So the question is, how technical should I be to get into product management, right? Because I think there is a common misconception, in my view at least, that you have to have technical skills to get into product. Now, there is a reason why that misconception is propagated, mostly because the PM job descriptions that a lot of people see, which are from IT and tech companies, and so there is a certain expectation of understanding of technology. Right now, of course, the response for that for a long time, at least from me, and I know from you, has been that the depth of technical knowledge really depends on what kind of customers are you serving, right? So, for example, if you're a product manager for a product that is used by technical people, so let's say developers, right? There are a whole bunch of products that expose APIs, and the consumers of that particular product or interface are developers. So the expectation is that, yes, you should be fairly technical, because otherwise you wouldn't have meaningful conversations with your customers and understand their context and their challenges and their problems to bring in and address that. Or the second scenario where the expectation of technical skills is higher is if you're really building a very core technical product, right? So, which is, let's say in the AI world, that is also true, which is if you are a product manager, if you're a company that is building, let's say, foundational models or domain adaptation, right? The large language models that have been fine-tuned now for your particular domain, or some orchestration layer in the generative AI part, that expectation is still there. But without that, the three things that you mentioned, right? Customer context, market context, business context, and leadership context are the ones that especially hiring managers look for. when you're hiring for a PM role, right? And the third one, I want to bring in that as well. One of the folks asked this question here. Again, this is a very common question. I don't have domain expertise. I've not worked for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years in any particular industry, whether it's education, healthcare, financial services, insurance, or any of those domains. So in that case, how do I look at becoming more visible and come across as a potential candidate for hiring manager? So what would you look for in those two kind of things? Somebody who does not come from the technical background, or somebody who does not come from the domain background, domain expertise.
Yeah, I was presenting this at one of the product management meetups here in San Francisco the other day. Let me pull up that slide from that deck.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like I said, it's important to visually maybe see this. And so I'll pull up that one slide that will hopefully answer that question, right?
Mm-hmm.
From a hiring manager perspective,
Yeah.
we look at these three lenses. And these three lenses, whether it is in the job description or not, it doesn't matter. Every hiring manager around the world is looking at every single product management hire, across these three lenses. And so the first one has become more important in the last 2 years than ever before, which is the the leadership lens. Skills which are hard to do by AI and agents, and hence is important for humans to highlight, which is the whole soft skills side. Leadership skills from art and science of storytelling to influencing to conflict management to negotiations to executive presence, right? And so on and so forth. There's just a lot of emphasis on the new age product manager to be able to be very, very good at this area, right? Just to make sure that because the mundane work is getting replaced with AI and routines and automation, which means the need for this skill becomes elevated. So that's very, very important. Second, the functional skills. In the case of product management, we saw the 25 skills earlier, the competencies. And so are you having a demonstrable way to showcase that particular set of skills? And third is domain. I think to your point, now each of these lenses have different weights. So they're not equal in importance. And it's also changing based on who the hiring manager is at that time for that company. So I, for many times, have hired people who have domain skills because in that particular role, cybersecurity being a domain, I would prefer somebody who comes from the same domain. In the same company, 6 months later, I've hired somebody
Product
who came
versus
from
modern product.
Can you
I
guys
came
go
from
mute, please, if you're not asking questions? Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. In the same company, 6 months later, I hired somebody from Sony Music who has nothing to do with cybersecurity. And the reason it was one of my best hires at that time is because I had enough domain experts already, enough engineers who accidentally became product managers already. And so I didn't need more domain experts. I wanted people who were very good, 9 out of 10 on the leadership and 9 out of 10 on the product management skill sets. And so this guy was an amazing product manager at Sony and is one of the best hires. And so it's not a necessity for you to have domain skills. It certainly helps in certain situations, but it's not a prerequisite. So in other words, you can actually, if you really have good product skills, product management skills, you can transcend and shift domains. And hundreds of people have done this.
Yeah, we have seen so many of them, change domains pretty quickly. Now, The interesting thing about domains is it cannot be taught. It has to be learned by being in that space. But the fact that you bring in the other two, which are higher, and demonstrate, in the same example that you referred, same scenario happened to in my case as well. I had 9 product managers who were experts in telecommunications, GSMA and CDMA and 5G and a whole bunch of stuff. The other person that we wanted to hire, I did not want deliberately somebody who comes from that industry, who comes from with a different other higher, set of skills in terms of customer empathy, right? How would you bring in customer understanding, right? Do you have those abilities and those skills? So, the other next set of follow-up question that we keep hearing, and I think I'm bringing this because these are not new questions. These have been asked to many of us over a period of time, but it is worth repeating some of these is, well, I think I know all of these things. I actually have added those things to my resume, and I am continuously applying for product management jobs, but it's going into a black hole, right? Which is, I'm not getting any calls. And clearly, we know that that's not the way that anyone should approach anymore, because it's become super easy for anyone to decorate a resume with a bunch of keywords optimized to bypass the keyword filters. But there is no barrier to do that for anyone. Anybody and everybody can do it. Beautifully decorate the resumes with keywords and pie charts and graph charts and everything, right? These days, everybody's resume looks awesome, isn't it? So in that case, I know what I would look for, but I would like to get your point of view on what are you looking for when somebody applies? I mean, how would somebody, what should any aspiring PM do to get the attention of the hiring team?
Yeah, I think I'll tell you what we're not looking for.
Hmm.
And then I'll tell you what makes sense. Resume alone is a short way of not getting the interview call.
Yeah.
If you are just submitting your resume and hoping that you're gonna get a lot of shortlisting and a lot of calls, unfortunately, that may not be the case anymore. So resume-based hiring is dead. And I think it's important to digest this, because I think for years
Hmm.
we've been relying on this one piece of asset called the resume. And I'm saying resume-based hiring is dead. What is instead happening is your resume, you should have one. The first thing that you put in on the top is the link to your portfolio. And that's what I'm looking for. And if I'm scanning the resume for anyone, within few milliseconds, my eyes are only looking at, okay, where's the portfolio?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I find the portfolio, I click on it, I access it, and I now see some evidence.
Yeah.
Here's an example of a user experience prototype that this person has built, or here's an example of a financial model that this person has built to explain the pricing and packaging skills. Here's an example of a business plan for a new startup idea that they've built. And so I'm looking for evidence. I'm looking for demonstration and not declaration, which I think is what resume ultimately becomes. To your point, everybody's resume looks amazing.
Yeah. Thanks to ChatGPT analysis of
And in fact, it's
resumes and
sometimes so amazing that I've
recommendations.
seen people AI, yeah. And then after AI is done, applying a fresh coat of paint on your resume, it's so good that you may feel, oh, is this really me?
Yeah.
It doesn't even look like it's like the Facebook filter that you put on your picture, and then you're like, oh my God, that looks amazing. That's not me, right? And so I think resume-based hiring is something that nobody on this call and nobody in this world should be relying on. So that's the kind of the first takeaway. The second takeaway is build evidence. That evidence can be in a portfolio, on your website, on LinkedIn. wherever you can publicly Dribble. If you're a UX designer or a product designer, set up a portfolio on Dribble. You choose where you would like to put it, right? But the point is, make it so obvious and visible to the hiring manager that you are a rock star.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that you will tell me if you're a rock star is if I listen to your music.
Yeah.
You telling me that you graduated from some school and gold medalist in some music school somewhere is great, but not really gonna cut the move the needle. So I would say focus very very clearly there. Now the question that we also get asked a lot: what if I have not worked
Yeah.
in that particular area at my office? Because I
Yeah.
don't have a way to build pricing opportunities
Mm-hmm.
or user experience designs at my office, right? Because my
Mm.
role is restrictive at where I
Yeah,
work.
it's kind of a chicken and egg situation that is brought in, saying that how would I build a portfolio if I had not worked in that area? But if I have to work in that area, I need to know, I need to get that opportunity, right? So I personally don't agree with that, but let's go with what your take is.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that is an excuse that
Mhm.
we hide behind, I feel. It's like I'm hiding behind the excuse of I don't have time, so that's why I'm not going to the gym. That's an excuse. I know that, but and
Mhm.
sometimes I still make that. And so I think get out of that excuse and figure out a fictitious project, figure out a startup in your neighborhood, figure out a large, open, publicly known company. Like who you
Mhm.
don't need permission from Swiggy to
Mhm.
go build a user experience, better checkout experience on how to check out a biryani on the Swiggy app. You don't need
Mhm.
somebody's permission on Swiggy. You just go do it.
Yeah.
And then you post it
Mhm.
on LinkedIn, tagging the co-founder of Swiggy and the head of design at Swiggy to say, here's what I've done. It doesn't matter whether they agree with you or not. The point is your job is to showcase and show off, evidence that you're capable of doing this. And I think
Yeah.
that is the missing piece that a lot of people sometimes don't pay attention to. And so then
Yeah.
what we do is what we call is spray and pray, right?
Mhm.
You spray your resume everywhere, on every news portal, on every
Every job portal that provides one click button to
job
say
portal,
apply
then you
here.
go to
Yeah.
yeah. It's like the
Yeah.
worst way of thinking about your career. Actually, a lot of people get into mild depression. It's not while we smile and giggle, a lot of people
Yeah.
will get into mild depression because it's not very fun to submit to 100 people and not even get two calls. And then you
Mhm.
start doing self-doubt. Hey, am I really good at this? Or maybe I'm not cut out for this. And these are all bad outcomes, bad thoughts
Mhm.
that comes because of poor planning and
Yeah.
not using the right technique. So that's
Yeah.
kind of my recommendation for anybody that as a hiring manager, please don't show me your resume, show me
Yeah.
your portfolio,
Yeah.
right?
No, I think increasingly we are also seeing companies hiring for product roles are basically saying that, look, I'm sure you have a amazing resume, you have a nice declarative statement that said, here is where you worked, here is a project that you did, and 15 years of or 5 pages of resume. But the way that we're going to hire is here is a challenge. Go work on it, come back after 3 days, present to me, and so that I will evaluate three things, right? One, that you now will help me understand how much you know about this particular skill. Second, your ability to apply that in the given challenge tells me, how you are connecting the dots. And the third one is you present to me and persuade me to see your point of view, right? So that's essentially three aspects, three ways of how many hiring managers that I know are looking. It's
Yeah.
also a faster way, it's efficient way for them, right? I mean, in 4 hours of that job description getting published, there are 450 resumes that get uploaded to it. I mean, who has the time to go through any of those, right? So I think this is a faster approach that I have done, and I know many people who come and hire for that. But I guess in this context, the last thing that I want to bring up, again, popular question is, but it's all nice, Pinkesh. You say build a portfolio, do a design audit, come up with a financial model, host a website, and include all of that. But I don't even know how to do those things yet. Right now, that is basically the skill building part. Right. And today we are living in an amazing world. I think there is no better time to be alive in my view than now, where you can sit in the comfort of your couch and press a play button on YouTube or Coursera or Udemy and let the person speak. And then we come out of that course and saying, yeah, I know market sizing, right? But where is the skill in that? It's basically knowledge and awareness at the best. So what is the best way to actually get this hands-on skill?
Invest in a learning system. And I'm not using the word program or MBA
Or
or
course or anything. Yeah.
certification or anything, right? You can choose whatever you feel is appropriate, but invest in a learning system that has three components. And any learning system that you're evaluating should pass your test in three areas. The first area is the curriculum, the curation of the content itself. Are you building skills with the most up-to-date, industry-focused practitioner focused curriculum? Very, very important, because there's no point in reading 1978 manual on product marketing that was written many years ago and very popular at that time, but is no longer relevant in today's world. And so you need something that's kind of latest and greatest from a cutting edge perspective, right? And old is not necessarily gold. So a lot of people keep on thinking, well, Ivy League, I mean, I love Stanford, I love Berkeley, I love ISP and all the other institutions in India. But just because it's old is not necessarily gold, right? You need to go and look the latest and the specificity and the focus. The second component, after you get through, the curriculum and the latest and greatest kind of frameworks that you're going to be exposed to, is the second is the ability to practice that in a sandbox environment, right? A lot of people call them experiential learning or learning by doing.
Learning by doing. That's right. Yeah.
As opposed to learning by listening. So the mode of instruction, the mode of absorption is the second important thing to evaluate any learning system for skills building, right? So you need to be labs environment. You need to kind of do stuff. And the third one, probably the most important one, is being facilitated through a coach and a one-on-one mentor who is giving feedback on the work that you're doing in your step 2, in your labs, right? And so all three are a must. Anything less than this, run away from that, would be my candid advice. While it's very exciting to get brands and certificates and 4-letter acronyms behind your name, I understand the temptation to get PMI and PMP and CSPO, and I hear all kinds of acronyms everywhere. And I'm not saying they're bad. Take them if you have the time and energy and money to spend. Do that. Don't count on it. Those acronyms means very little things light of the other three things that I mentioned, right?
I think what also matters
the easiest
is,
way to really remember this.
Sorry, what did that acronym do to you in terms of how you can showcase that is what matters.
Correct. Correct. These acronyms on its own is not enough, Sai. If those acronyms and if those certifications and if those MBAs allowed you to to get these three things in the learning
Yeah.
system, then it makes sense, right? As a
Yeah.
side, it's a side benefit, not the main. And so the analogy that I would throw for
Yeah.
all of you that I always use and uh, I overuse, but it's important to set that is like swimming. In order to learn swimming, you need instructions. You need a swimming pool to practice swimming. Otherwise, it's all theory. You're just moving hands in air at 45 degrees angle just because it's a great, instructions that given to you by somebody, but there's no implications, there's no application. And third, you need a swimming coach
Yeah.
who's watching you while you're swimming and practicing that swimming. So all three is what I would say, Sai, is a must in any learning system to build
Yeah.
skills.
Yeah, great. I think what we just talked about in the last 10 minutes is absolutely relevant even now in the era that we have entered with AI. There is absolutely no change in that. But so let's spend a little time on the new animal in the zoo called AI product manager. Right now, obviously, this is not a new title. It's been there for many years now. But the understanding of what that role is and the expectation from that role at that time, even 10 years ago, 12 years ago, is very different than what it is now, right? So at the time when people talked about AI, it was very clearly about predictive, prescriptive, analytics related AI part, right? So if you are working in a product or a company that heavily used analytics to provide you some descriptive information or some predictive charts or even help you make those decisions, that was there, right? And that required quite a bit of technical understanding in terms of some math, some programming, and of course a little bit of machine learning, right? But I think the resurgence of this AI product manager, if you look at it in a new context, there are three dimensions to this AI now, right? So while the traditional AI, which focuses on classification and all of that, is still relevant, generative AI, of course, threw much more spotlight on this, right? So there is now generative AI, there is predictive AI, and there is, of course, people are proclaiming 2025 as the year of agentic AI, right? Now, so I think in that context, I think it's worth spending few minutes to if I were to bring in the questions, the messages that we got from the previous chat, is where do I start? Right? Because a lot of people are saying that, well, you know what, I'm not, same question, I'm not technical enough. Should I get into data science? Should I do machine learning? Should I do NLP and programming, Python and this and that? Right? So there is even more anxiety on that particular area. And I think this time the anxiety is also driven by the fact that pretty much every white collar job that we know is changing by AI completely, right? So I think it's worth spending a few minutes on where do I start in this dimensions of the so-called AI PM.
Yeah, I think it's the most urgent question on the minds of not just aspiring PMs, but
Even current
also
PMs. Yeah.
uh, I would say 3.5 million, existing product managers
Yeah.
on the planet who are all wondering, hey, look, this AI is changing the world for developers dramatically. How is that changing the world for me, and how do I become? Because they're high in demand. AI
Mhm.
product management is one of the highest in demand roles right now, and on an
Mhm.
average, they get paid 60 to 80% more
Mm.
than a same product manager in the
Mm.
same experience level in the same industry, right? Somebody who's a product manager, very good product manager, and somebody who's a very good AI product manager, the
Mhm.
delta is almost double, right? Almost 60% to 80% more. And so everybody wants to become one. So I think there are two parts to this thing. And let me see if I have a slide to show. One is what to do, and
Mhm.
second is how to get there, right? So first is kind
Yeah.
of setting the goal for yourself and say, if this is the universe of AI PM,
Yeah.
an AI product manager, what does that even look like from a skill sets perspective? And then kind of
Mm.
second is, yeah, in fact, this chart I really like because it spells out just like the competency map for a product manager, the 25
Yeah.
competencies that we have that every full stack product manager needs to know. This spells out the individual competencies for um, for an AI product manager, right?
Yeah.
And and if there is a actually before this slide, can I slide that leads to this slide,
Yeah. Sure.
if you don't mind, yeah?
Yeah.
And so this particular um, block diagram is exactly what I think, Sai, you were showing, but
Yeah.
perhaps it builds up the steps so that everybody can understand that, look, there are three bubbles
Mhm.
of three flavors of AI product managers, right? One is the whole generative AI. Second is the whole predictive AI. And third is the
Mhm.
agentic AI. And all three are super important. All three are high in demand, but you may not want to overwhelm yourself in doing all of it at the same time. And so if you
Mhm.
think about it, the generative AI is the kind of skill sets that you need to start building is more around vibe coding. And when I say coding, these are not programming language coding. When I say vibe coding, I'm talking about
The
low
language,
code, no code,
natural language, and
natural
yeah.
language,
Yeah.
prompt engineering, right? That those
Yeah.
type of things. But I think it's important to know this. Prompt engineering is not common sense,
Yeah.
as most people think. You just go open up ChatGPT, start typing in your own English format structure. That's not prompt engineering. That's just prompt and maybe sometimes lousy prompts.
Yeah.
Uh, so prompt engineering itself is a structured way of understanding how to instruct the LLMs, the AI models at the behind the cover to tell them to give you something high accuracy
Yeah.
at high
To get the
level.
best from the models. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that requires extraction skills, prompt engineering skills, right?
Yeah.
The second one is your predictive AI, which is a little bit more on the technical side, the machine learning side, the model classification side, the mapping and figuring out the accuracy of the models, hallucinations of the models, and a lot of that, right? And the third is the kind of more workflow oriented agentic AI, which
Mm.
means what kinds of agents are out there. What kind of frameworks? N8N is one of those
Mm.
most popular frameworks that every product manager
Tools.
just needs
Mm.
to know, right? Uh, Maybe starting from the basics of make.com, Zapier.com, LangChain, and there's so relevance AI. There's so many frameworks which allow you to build drag and drop
Yeah.
mapping the user workflow. So the user journey is so important. Going back to the customer context that we spend time, if you had the customer context, now you can build an AI agent in 4 hours. No coding
Mhm.
necessary, right? So these are the three kind of flavors. And if you are now a business PM,
Mm.
it is better for you to start building from the generative AI side. If you are a
Mm.
domain PM, who's somebody who's expert in the domain, start from the agentic AI. And then maybe if you are a
Mm.
technical PM, a data science driven PM, a numbers driven PM, a math driven PM. So it depends on what kind of product manager you are. You have
Yeah.
different entry points. That is the preferred way, the prescriptive way. You need all three eventually.
Mm.
Uh, but the entry point doesn't have to be overwhelming. And so
Yeah.
this is kind of the prescriptive guidance. And I think this maybe then leads up to all the competencies that I think you were showing. So I'll stop sharing if you want to put that chart back up, which is essentially saying that, look, over all of those AIPM flavors,
Mm.
and across all three aspects of generative AI, predictive AI, and agentic AI, what are those micro competencies? And that's what this chart is
Yeah.
kind of summarizing very well.
Yeah. I think it's worth mentioning that this is not about the technical skills. This is still the product management skills, but layering on top of different types of AI, generative, predictive, agentic for different outcomes, right? As a business product manager, you are still focused on, you know, bringing in the business context and delivering business outcomes. But if you come from data products, right? So essentially, or technical expertise, then you have a lot more ability to get into selection of models, a bit of machine learning. Again, machine learning essentials is required. You don't have to come up with a new machine learning algorithm, or adopt and recommend some RNN, CNN, all those kind of things. But it's very important to understand what key role that you would be driving or you want to be driving, and then focusing on those areas. It's similar to what we talked about, full stack product manager. I think this gives a good understanding of what it takes to be a well-rounded AI product manager right now. Because you can't be completely moving away and shying away saying that, well, I don't know anything. I don't want to know anything about models or model selection or cost benefit. Because at the end of the day, you need to make the recommendation on the models not just based on the technical or the performance aspects, which your data team will do, but from a cost and trade-offs point of view. And that's the business role essentially in this, right? So I think that brings me to the last thing that I mentioned at the beginning. We made two statements and a whole bunch of messages around that. The second statement was every product manager is an AI product manager in the future, right? Which means that what the responsibilities, whether it's a customer context, business context, market context, innovation context, all of that now you can significantly become, or rather insanely productive by bringing in some of these capabilities, generative AI capabilities, especially into day-to-day workflows, and also looking at what new value can we create for the customers, right? Because a lot of times there were problems that customers had that could not be solved very easily based on what was available at the time. And today, generative AI and predictive AI and even agentic AI are making those impossible things a lot more possible and accessible to a whole bunch of people, right? So I think we probably would pause there and see if we can take 2 to 3 questions, spend another 5 minutes or so. I know I've been watching the chat session so far. I think I may have covered anything. So instead of me going through a chat at this point, if you guys have any questions, this is a good time to go. I know I saw Anup raise his hand. Anup, if your question was not answered, then you may want to
No,
go.
it's almost like it got cleared.
Super. Okay. Aditi.
Yeah, so actually, I wanted to ask questions around the domain expertise. So I for last 2 3 months, I'm trying to apply in UAE, and over there the market is very different. Basically, if they're hiring for cart management, then they look for experience only in cart management, not even something else in uh, like e-commerce. And like no matter what I do, my resume is not getting shortlisted. And over the last 1 year, I've also learned Python, and now I can
So
actually
I saw
understand.
your long message. What's the question, Aditi? Because I think we covered about, domain expertise is important and also contextual. Now, that means that if the company has many product managers with domain expertise already, then that may not be required. But if they are looking for domain experts, they will stick to that, the hiring managers, right? So that's the first part. The second part is maybe you want to try the different approach that we talked about. Rather than leading with a resume, with whatever you know right now, build some assets, showcase those assets in variety of ways, right? So that means that instead of just applying with your PDF resume, maybe the first part of your resume links to some portfolio website that you have, a couple of videos, a pitch deck, a slide deck, a speaking engagement, whatever, because that is a signal that is highly valued by hiring managers, as opposed to you've declared, I know cloud, I know Python, I know data analysis, I know this. Everybody is doing that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Last question.
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
My question was regarding AI product management. There are two aspects to this, I feel. One is engineering a product that incorporates AI into it. AI ready product, right? When you're building an AI ready product, it's AI product management is required. The other aspect is using AI to actually do product management. So I think the distinction between these two concepts were not clear
So
in the discussion we had so far.
let me bring that. I think what you're referring to, again, I want to caveat this very clearly. When we say AI, we are referring to not every AI, right? So AI for product managers and AI product management. I think these are the two distinctions that you are referring to. Okay. So now AI for product managers is absolutely phenomenal. Now, again, in this context, AI means generative AI right now, right? Because now you can actually look at day-to-day workflows, day-to-day activities that you as a product manager are doing. For example, doing market analysis, doing competitive analysis, creating a competitive positioning statement, writing user stories, a PRD document, or even coming up with wireframes and mockups, right? So, or coming up with a business plan, a whole bunch of these things can benefit from leveraging generative AI in your day-to-day workflows, right? And obviously for that, number one, you would require the first and most important AI skill, prompt engineering. The second thing is your ability to rapidly do some prototyping on your own without relying on anybody else, right? And today that is absolutely possible. The other part which you said is AI product management. Now that also has multiple layers, but I won't get into those layers. Simply put, as a PM, what kind of new experiences can you create for the customer on your product, which were not possible before, but today they are possible, right? Voice interfaces, personalized user experience, personalized journeys. These were not easily possible before. Today they are. The second aspect of that is you are saying AI ready product, but I would say AI driven product, right? Which means AI itself is a core value proposition in the product. And that requires you different set of abilities, which is now you really need to understand model capabilities, model evaluations, model selection, and cost benefit, and working with the data science teams to make sure synthetic data generation, like all the things that was shown, right? So it's important to structure these things in context. AI product management is not just one thing, right? Just like anything AI. Yeah, hopefully that answers.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. All right. So I hope this was useful. I think I know I enjoyed it. And I know Pinkesh taking time from your conference schedule. Thanks for doing this. Take care, guys, and good night.
Thank you so much, Sai. Thank you
Good
so
luck.
much, Mikesh.